Welcome back. When 18 candidates ran for the Republican presidential nomination in 2016, it seemed like a lot, and it was. But we're likely to see even more Democrats taking the plunge in 2020, from working-class liberals to those calling for President Trump's impeachment. My next guest definitely belongs to the impeach Trump crowd. Billionaire Tom Steyer spent more than $100 million for Democrats in the midterms, and his face was a regular presence on cable television.
Yet today, people in Congress and his own administration know that this president is a clear and present danger, who's mentally unstable and armed with nuclear weapons.
Steyer has been holding town halls, and he's just announced 5 more, 4 in early primary and caucus states, the four you're familiar with, plus California, which is trying to become an early primary player with moving up its primary as well. Tom Steyer joins me now. Mr. Steyer, welcome to Meet the Press.
Chuck, thank you for having me.
All right. As I noted there are 30 potential Democratic candidates that could run. Why you, and why you more so than any of the other 30?
Well, let me stop you and say that I haven't decided to run for president.
Fair enough. Okay.
What I did in 2018 was basically 2 things. Our organization, Next Gen America, mobilized the largest youth voter action in American history. And at the same time, Need to Impeach, the organization I start, gathered almost 6.5 million signatures of American citizens calling for the president's impeachment and removal for office. So basically, during 2018, I was full-time working on grassroots organizing Americans to get their voices heard in the country. What I'm doing right now is putting out an agenda, a framework for a social contract for the 21st century, which I call the 5 rights, which are the rights that Americans need to be free to pursue their own life and their own destiny.
I read it. It sounds like a presidential platform. Is it fair to call it that?
What it is a framework for thinking about how we can have a positive agenda in the 21st century. And I'm putting it out there for all the people who are running for president to look at and get behind. Because what's missing in American politics is a positive vision of what this country stands for and what the social contract is with American citizens, so they can be protected in the world and have the freedom to go forward and live out the lives they want to live.
I get you to respond to something that Paul Waldman, a progressive columnist at the Washington Post, wrote about you. Fairly flattering portrayal, but he wrote this. I'll admit that I start with a bias against billionaires who think they should be president. The super rich tend to live in a bubble in which everyone is constantly telling them how brilliant they are, which helps to convince them that because they succeeded in one area, they can succeed in any area. Explain how you're not in a bubble, a billionaire bubble.
Well, I see you haven't met my family. The other thing I'd say is this. I have spent the last 6 years traveling around the United States talking to average citizens, going to red states and blue states to really understand what Americans are going through. And what I can tell you, Chuck, is it is really close to the bone. At one of my town halls in Newark about 6 weeks ago, 2 different people stood up and said, if they had repealed the Affordable Care Act, I wouldn't be here because I'd be dead. You know, one of our 5 rights is the right to health. We need universal health care as a right. I was down in Greensboro, North Carolina, probably the week before the election, and I was talking to a bunch of college students, and one of the people who was at lunch with me was a young man named Chavez, who was 18 years old, who'd gotten a 4.1 in high school, who had absolutely dedicated himself, gotten into college, couldn't afford to go. One of the rights is the right to learn. Free education, pre-K through college. We can afford this. What you see when you go around the United States is how close to the bone average Americans are. That's the news.
But let me go back, though. Why you? Why you and not Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or Sherrod Brown? Because they have similar experiences. They've been to these towns. They have similar points of view. So what do you think you bring to the table that's different than these other electeds?
Look, I'm one of the luckiest people in the United States. There's no question about it. I had a family that really took care of me. They made sure that I got a fantastic education. I never had to wonder whether I was going to have a hot meal at night. I knew I might not like my mother's cooking, but I knew for sure I was getting a hot meal.
Yeah.
I feel as if I've been enormously privileged, both by my family taking care of me and by what people have built in the United States over hundreds of years. But what I've seen when I was investing money for schools and foundations and people was that this system has been rigged for big corporations and people like me. And unrigging this system, it's not about me, Chuck.
Yeah.
It's about getting the needs of the people of the United States put first and foremost, which they are not right now in our political system, and which they all know that they're not first and
Where
foremost.
would you prioritize impeachment right now for the new Democratic House?
I think,
You think it's front and center, don't you?
I think it's an absolute first step to getting towards a positive vision for the country. And let me say
You would
this.
start with impeachment. If you were Elijah Cummings, well, he's on oversight, so Judiciary Committee, you would start drawing up these articles?
I think there's no question that this president has both met the grounds for impeachment and that it's urgent to get him out of office. And I was just listening to the last segment when you're talking about Saudi Arabia. Is there anyone in the United States who can tell you that the president is acting on Saudi Arabia not because the Saudis are paying him money?
But let me ask you, what is your line on foreign policy? There's some allies that are sort of necessary evils. It's American foreign policy realism. Where do you draw the line on human rights versus America's national interests?
I think the idea that America is not value-driven is a break with hundreds of years of what America stands for. Are we interested in how we do
trade
personally?
with China, for instance, because of their human rights policy?
Absolutely not. But would I also cut off all values in order to get along for a short-term bump in some trade situation? Also not. The United States has done best around the world when we've done right, because then people understand who we are, and the idea of cooperating with people who are fair trade partners, who have a broader vision, who understand that when you cooperate, everybody does better, that in fact a fist fight is not where you create the most value, Chuck. Did you learn that when you were in fourth grade?
Final question is this. What's the biggest impediment to running for you?
As far as I'm concerned, the biggest hole in American policy.
No, this is for you.
I understand. I'm answering your question.
Okay.
What's missing in America is a positive vision. So what I'm looking for is someone going to take something very similar to the 5 rights that I put forward to protect the American people and really run with it so that we have a vision of what we're trying to do.
So if another candidate grabs your 5 rights, you'd step aside?
If there's somebody out there this is about the people of the United States, not the person.
Okay.
If there is a movement to get in place something that we desperately need, which we've always had, which is a vision of what this country stands for and how the American people come first, I will be part of that movement absolutely 100%, one way or the other.
Whether you're a candidate or supporting
Absolutely.
All right. Tom Steyer, a progressive activist from California. Thanks for coming on and sharing your views.
Chuck, thank
Much
you for having
appreciated. Be safe out there. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.